Good morning, friends. Welcome to the program. Good morning, Lou.
Good morning. How are we doing today?
I'm good. Early start today.
Yes.
Feels fresh and crisp and clean.
Yeah, you were in a very good mood when you hooked up this morning.
So, friends, today we are doing the last four verses of chapter 16. I think you will find this of interest. I know growing up in India, this verse, which is the triple doored gateway to hell, was talked about a lot in my early years. And I never understood what it meant until I read it in the Gita. So here we go. 16, verse 21. It says, the gateway to Nark. Nark is a Sanskrit word for hell. The gateway to hell is a triple door. This doorway to painful experiences, which destroys oneself, is threefold: desire, anger, and also greed. Therefore, one should give up this triad. That is the actual verse. So, in Sanskrit, desire, greed, and lobh, or desire, anger, and greed, is called Kama, Krodh, and Lobh. Kama is desire, Krodh is anger, greed is Lobh. So, what it suggests, first of all, is that we tend to succumb to our desires. The desires become binding desires. Now, watch this. If you're writing down, write these things down too. Binding desires, and then the binding desires become greed for more and more. And when the greed or the desire is interrupted or stopped from developing, then you develop anger. And we'll go into all of this. So, the triple door to the gateway to hell or Naraka means that you have almost like bait in front of it. You know what bait is, right?
Yeah.
Bait is what you put on a hook, on a fishing hook, and you throw it in the water. There's a worm, let's say, and the worm is moving, and a fish going by looks at the worm, doesn't notice that there's a hook inside, is tempted by the bait, by the worm, grabs the worm, but instead the hook gets stuck in his mouth, and the fish is pulled out of the water and dies. So there's a flower called a Venus flytrap. I remember as a child, I used to look at this, and it was amazing that I saw that this was a big flower, very tempting, and the flies used to come near this thing. I saw it on a video or a movie, and they sit on the fly and immediately on the flower, and immediately the flower closes and traps the fly. So there are multiple baits like this. I can give you examples of in India how they catch elephants, how they catch tigers, how they catch monkeys with bait. What the Gita tells us, Upanishads tell us, is that we all succumb to this bait. All these desires are baits in front of us. And this bait then takes us into hell. Now, Naraka, which is the Sanskrit word for hell, is what? Not a place. It's not, if you go underground deep towards the center of the earth, there's a place over there with hot fire and Satan with a whatever it's called, trident.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's an experience. All experiences are temporary. Nothing is permanent. So if you have a painful experience, a displeasure, an unpleasant experience, all of those are considered hell, depending on the severity. If you have a very happy experience, pleasant experience, that's considered heaven. Now, these experiences, hell and heaven, are what we're talking about here. So when you have desire, when you have greed, when you have binding greed, when you have anger, you cannot enjoy. Why? Because your mind is so disturbed, right? Keep this sequence in mind. It's very scientific in the Upanishads and the Gita. You have a desire for, let's say, a lot of money, and you say, I want this area, this, if I can only get this business, I can buy it, I will have it. Now this other person's also wanting to buy the same business from me. It's a cigarette store, a liquor store, right in the convenience store, whatever, and you want to buy it. And you say, if I only had that, I can quit my job, I can run my business selling cigarettes or whatever, and I'll make a lot of money. Your greed for that becomes greater and greater and greater. You're so disturbed that this other person might get it instead of you, that your mind is so disturbed that you can't even, at the end, even if you get the store, you cannot enjoy it because your mind is so disturbed. Because in order to enjoy something, your mind has to be calm, peaceful, etc. So you can't enjoy because your mind is so disturbed.
Right.
Even the happiness that you think you were going to get is lost because your mind is disturbed. So, what was the point of getting this desire and greed and binding greed? So, kama, desire, produces greed for more and more, and then anger when it's destroyed, when it's blocked.
Mhm.
Block any one of these. If you can control any one of these three, if you can control your anger, if you can control your greed, or you can control your desires, the other two quote unquote henchmen also come along and you can block them. You can control them.
Mhm.
That's an interesting thing. All you have to do is to control one. You don't have to control all three. Not only that, Krishna has throughout this verse, chapter 16, throughout this chapter, has given us a number of negative qualities. The beauty is that these three leaders, desire, greed, and anger, you start to control these three, the other negative qualities that Krishna described also can be under your control. So, what is binding desire? If you have a desire for that cigarette store, that business that you wanted to buy, if non fulfillment of that desire makes you angry, that is considered a binding desire. There are many desires, right? I'm walking by my kitchen and I
Mhm.
see something there that I want to eat. Let's say
Right.
a donut. I'm not particularly fond of donuts, but I'm giving you an example. I see a donut sitting there on a plate. I say, I love that. I would love to eat that donut. And then I say, I shouldn't. And I walk by. And I'm not that disappointed. That's not a binding desire. It was a desire, but not all desires are binding. If, however, that business that I wanted to buy, the cigarette store, liquor store, whatever it was, a convenience store, I didn't get it. And it's, I am going to be disturbed by that. That non fulfillment of that desire making me angry, consider that desire a binding desire. Okay, so there's a difference. Now, what is greed? This we should understand so that you can actually mark it down and memorize it. If you want something that you do not need, characterize and underline. If you want something that you do not need and that you can easily manage to do without, but you want it anyway, that's considered greed.
Mhm.
You do not need it, you can manage fine without it, but you want it anyway. So, the guy who has a job as a postal worker, getting a salary, but he says, you know what, I can easily manage to do without that business because I'm getting a good salary, I've got a good pension, I've got insurance, but it's not a big salary. I
Right.
can easily manage without it. I do not need it because I have a job. But if I get it, I would make a lot more money. Therefore, I want it anyway. That is considered greed. So, desire, binding desire, greed. Somebody else comes and blocks it, anger. So far, we've got multiple negative qualities that Krishna has given us. You manage these three, my friends,
Yeah.
the rest dissipate away. Now, nobody wants to go to hell. Nobody wants to go to Naraka. Nobody wants to have painful experiences. So, what are these painful experiences? I want the business, and all night I'm dreaming. I'm not even able to sleep, thinking, what if he offers this much more than I offer? What if the neighbor says, I don't want this guy in there? What if this happens? What about the landlord? All of these thoughts are keeping me up all night. I can't sleep. During the day, all I can talk about is that, so that my family, my coworkers, my friends, whoever I'm talking to, say, enough. I don't want to hear it anymore. So all of that is a painful experience. Nobody wants it. How to get rid of it? How to get rid of these desires, anger, and greed? Multiple prescriptions are given, but briefly, prayer. It doesn't matter which religion one is, every religion has prayer. prayer helps. There are certain disciplines, which I won't go into here, but meditation is something that you know, that's one. But the most important that at our level, beginners, basic people, is called vichara. Vicara. Vichara. Vichar means, if you in colloquial language, question. But really, it means inquiry into yourself. You change with vichara, change with inquiry your priorities. What are your priorities? Now, when you were a child, if you had a balloon, somebody gave you a helium balloon, and you're holding it and you let go and it flies up into the air and you start to cry. You're so distraught, so upset because your balloon flew away. Or somebody gave you a balloon, pricked it with a pin, it burst, and you start crying. He burst my balloon.
Yeah.
Today, what would happen if that balloon was nothing? You would laugh and say, that's okay. That's all right. I'll give you another balloon. No, I don't want it. It's okay. Why? Because you have matured as far as the balloon is concerned.
Right.
I'm not saying you have matured. You have matured only as far as the balloon is concerned. But you have not matured as far as your car, your home, your wealth, your stocks. If tomorrow somebody says, hey, by the way, sorry to tell you, while you were here at work, downstairs some car was stolen, found out it was your car, it's gone, and you don't have any insurance on it, you're going to cry just like you cried when the balloon was lost. So you're not matured, only matured as far as the balloon is concerned. What the Upanishads, what our scriptures tell us is that you must use vichara and inquiry to say, am I going to really get disturbed by that? So what if I lost the balloon? Big deal. So what if my stocks went down in value? So what if my car disappeared? I'm not saying that it's easy,
Right.
but with inquiry, you come to a point with vichara, you come to a point where you say, what is really important in my life? What difference does this make? So you use vichara to get rid of your unnecessary attachments to different things, and you become mature as far as all these concerned. With the other thing that the Gita has often told us is raga and dvesha. Raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes. If you have and you foster and you fan like a flame, you you foster and increase your raga and dvesha, your likes and dislikes, it makes it harder to control your desires. And I have found that from personal experience that growing up, there were loved ones of mine that kept saying, oh, I know you like this. Here, have some more. Here, I know you like it. Oh, no, don't give him that. He doesn't like it. So the more that was done that way, you like this, have some more. You don't like it, you don't have to eat it. Don't eat it. That fostered oneself. Now, I used to start thinking about these sages up in the Himalayas. They have nothing to eat. And every so often they come down from their high resorts in the not resorts, high places in the mountains to the villages that are on the foothills of the mountains, and they go around begging for food. Whatever food is given to them, they take with gratitude and eat it with pleasure. Okay, they don't say, oh my God, this is delicious, but they eat it as a gift from God, from the person that gave it to them. And they eat it with satisfaction and they go back up into the mountains. And I said, that is the best control of raga and dvesha, to be able to say, look, whatever I get is a gift from God. Whatever I get is a gift from this world. Accept it without saying, well, I don't like this and I like this. So I started to do that some time ago with food. And I found that now when there's something in front of me, I just eat it without saying I like it or I don't like it. And my body accepts it, my tongue accepts it, my mind accepts it. So it is possible to control your desires, your greed, your anger. I'm not saying it's easy.
Right.
It's a lifetime of practice. I'm definitely not there, but I'm saying it's a way. If you can get from point A to just a little bit past point A, you've done a lot. Forget about getting all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Any comments, Lou, before I go to the next verse?
No, I imagine we're going to get to it, but you talked a few episodes back about changing out these desires by raising the level of your desires and the priorities of your desires. In other words, exchanging for more spiritual desires is one way to control these.
Yeah, there's many, as I said, there's many different disciplines about how to get rid of it. That's another one, is to exchange them for other desires. Just like, we when we were kids, we liked maybe marbles or balloons. And then as you grow older, you exchange those for higher desires. I want a bike now. I want a
Right.
bicycle. I want money at this, that kind of thing. So you exchange them. Here, when you get to the point where you have spiritual desires, to say there's a hunger, to say, I want to know what God is, I want to know, have more of this knowledge. As each one of you gets this knowledge, I get a lot of emails and texts and messages from many of you, and I'm grateful for that. That says, I can't get enough of this. I keep listening to these episodes and I'm thirsty, I'm hungry for more. That is a desire. And that's an acceptable desire. That's what the Gita says, Upanishads say. It's an acceptable desire. When you exchange your desire for worldly pleasures for spiritual desires, it gets you to a higher level. Is that what you're saying, Lou?
Yes, because
Okay.
you were talking about how when we go from childhood, we're not worried about the balloon anymore. We have different desires. Well, channeling those desires to something more spiritual is one way to help mitigate
Right. And the
the
highest
difference.
level of desires is the spiritual one, to be able to see God, to know God, to become God
Mhm.
when you become self realized. So, verse 22 says, sorry, a man who is free from these three gates of hell or darkness follows what is good for himself. Because of that, he goes to a higher end. So, here he says, what happens when you are able to get rid of this kama, krodha, lobha, desire, anger, and greed? What happens when you get rid of it? You go to a higher end. So here he's talking about hell, naraka, being darkness. Why is it called darkness? Why is it called darkness? In fact, in the Isha Vasya Upanishad, it says, those who are self destructive go to the worlds named Asurya, that are as dark as the darkness of a blind man.
Mm.
So the worlds are called Asurya. And remember, Asura means demon,
Right.
Asurya means the world of demons. They're so dark that it's the darkness of a blind man. Who gets there? Which man? Those who are self destructive go to those worlds. Now, just as an aside, as you know, when we do our field trips, we always come across these different things. Asurya or Asuri is the land or world of darkness. So, when in the past, thousands of years ago, when the people from India, Sanskrit speaking, went westwards towards the Middle East, they found that there were lands such as, which are now called, we call them Syria and Assyria or Assyria. Am I right, Lou?
Yes.
These were called in Sanskrit Surya and Asurya. So that's just as an aside. But why is it called darkness, narka or hell? Why is it called darkness or tamas? Total laziness, indolence. Why? Because at that point, like I said, the person who wants something so badly, whether it be pleasures of the flesh, pleasures of money, wealth, fame, politics, anything, at that point, vichara, inquiry, questioning is obscured. They have nothing. They say, listen, I want this so badly, I'm willing to do X, Y, and Z for it. Heck with all the consequences.
Right.
That's what that means. There's no light there. There's no dark. There's just nothing but darkness. He is not thinking straight, and he doesn't care. This kama, krodha, lobha, desire, anger, greed, all of us have it. Every human being, whether you're an adult or a child. In fact, children have it. I have four little grandchildren, and I see it in them. There is that need, a desire for something, and that need, that desire gets to be a greed. I want more. I want more. Can I have this? Can I have this? That kind of stuff. And when they don't get it, when another sibling takes it, they get angry and they fight and they hit. And they become greedy for wanting more of it. And it becomes a binding desire. So we should use discrimination, inquiry, decision making in order to guide our desires properly, our mind, or the way our mind is thinking. Without kama, without krodha, without lobha, you have full energy because your mind is crystal clear, your mind is sharp, there's no dissipation of your energy, you think clearly, you have peace of mind, and you have sharp faculties. How wonderful is that?
Mm.
So here in verse 22, he's saying, those who are self destructive go to those worlds. Acquisition and enjoyment, which we all are guilty of. We want something, we want something, we want something. We want to get it, acquisition. And then you want to enjoy it. Why? Because you think that it's going to give you peace of mind. If only I get that store, that convenience store, that business, that liquor store, that cigarette store, I will have peace of mind. No, they don't give you peace of mind. Those things that are inevitably lost, because in this world, whatever you acquire, whatever you have acquisition of and enjoyment of, is going to leave you. You're going to leave it. You're going to die.
Mm.
And wealth goes up and down, fame goes up and down, power goes up and down. When you go down, it's going to be lost. Did it give you peace? No. Did it give you security? No. Did it give you happiness? No. If it did, whatever it did, it gave you temporarily, very short period of time. So it didn't give you that. So acquisition and enjoyment, my friends, does not give you happiness, peace, security, etc. You only think it does, or it's that it's going to give it to you. The richest want more money. The most beautiful want more beauty. The most powerful want more power. The most famous want more fame, and they want to keep it to themselves. If you are actually able to give up these desires and the greed and the anger, you actually are in sight of nirvana, of getting to be self-realized. So keep that in mind, and hopefully we will all get there. So we are on chapter 16, two more verses left, 23 and 24. Lou, any comments, questions?
No, very clear.
Okay.
And again, it's a summary of what we talked about in large part getting here.
Yes, yes. So, verse 23, chapter 16. When binding desires, we talked about what binding desires are, or karma, cause a person to act under the influence of those desires, and the person disregards the injunctions. What are injunctions? Do's and don'ts.
Mm.
When you have binding desires and you act under the influence of those desires and you disregard the injunctions, do's and don'ts of the scriptures, that person does not gain happiness in this world. We already talked about that. Nor maturity of himself, nor perfection. And he strays away from the path towards Brahman.
Mm.
So we already discussed this. It's sort of self-explanatory. A man who gives in to his desires and discards the teaching of the scriptures. That's what he's talking about here. He says that person who gives into his desires, binding desires, like I'm going past this imaginary donut here in my kitchen and I say I want it, I go past it, I forget about it completely. That's just a desire. But my binding desire is where I go past the donut, I go to my bedroom and I keep thinking about the donut. I can't think of anything else until ultimately I come back and I eat it.
Right.
That is giving into that binding desire. And I disregard the teaching of the scriptures. Now, the scriptures don't say anything about not eating donuts, okay? But when it comes to pleasures of the sex, of the flesh, or comes to pleasures of wealth or fame or power, to get there, you might have to do some things that you know is not right.
Right.
One thing you should know, that the scriptures very rarely, if ever, tell you do this or don't do this. I don't think you can look back at all our episodes so far and I hear me say, Krishna says, don't do this or do this. Even when it comes to ahimsa, he never says, don't kill animals to eat them. He says, basically, he leaves it up to you to use your intellect and your knowledge to decide when to eat animals, fish, kill or not to kill, even human beings. In fact, he tells Arjuna to go ahead and kill. So, a person who gives into his desires, sorry, I went off the track a little bit there. A person who gives into his desires and discards the teachings of the scriptures is usually unsuccessful. He may be successful in getting the business and
Right.
making even a lot of money there, but he's not successful in life. He has no glory and no inner peace. no happiness, no relaxation, no peace of mind. He is only looking to acquire and enjoy, as you are, my friend, with all due respect, all of us. I want to get this, I want to enjoy it. I want to buy this, I want to enjoy it. Only for acquisition enjoyment. For what? For what do we acquire and enjoy? For what do we get? For security? For peace? For happiness? The Gita tells us this is all futile.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it through this. You're not going to get it through more and more money or power or fame or beauty. But it's easier to follow your desires, much easier than to follow this teaching of the scriptures. That's why we do it. Problem is, it's a whirlpool. You jump in there to get one desire, the mind throws up another. Whether you get it or you don't, the mind keeps throwing up more and more desires. And therefore, you get more binding desires, more greed, more anger. Again and again, those situations produce greed, anger, and more desires. Your mind gets agitated, therefore, you have no peace, no happiness, and you can't pursue spiritual path. So, what are these scriptures? The Gita is one. That is the simplest condensation of the teachings of the Upanishads and the Vedas. Those are really heavy, high teachings. And Sage Vyasa said, this is too heavy for the average person to understand. This is going back to 5,000 years ago. He said, I've got to write it as a story like Krishna and Arjuna so that the people understand. And he weaved it into a story with Krishna and Arjuna. But everything that is important in the Upanishads is there in the Gita in the form of a story. So Vedas and Upanishads are the source of knowledge. This not physics, not chemistry, not mathematics, geography, history, but this knowledge that you're learning now. It, in essence, teaches you through knowledge what you should do and shouldn't do, although it doesn't tell you, don't do this, for the most part. These in Sanskrit are known as vidhis, Vidhis, vidhis. These do's and don'ts or vidhis also tell you the consequences of our actions, both good and bad. Not only consequences immediate that you see, I mean, you hit somebody, stab him with a knife, he's going to be dead or going to get severely hurt. That's a consequence, immediate consequence. But the knowledge that you get is also teaching you about karmic consequences, what karma you're producing, and that's what you learn, and that's what's important. So the first teaching is, Shankaracharya says, the first teaching is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself in all respects, your body, your life, your family, etc. Take care of yourself. You can't really study or do anything worthwhile if you're starving, if you're hungry, if you're homeless. So take care of yourself. Be decent person, shower, clean, dress nicely, go to school, etc. That's the first rule. Second teaching, he says, to gain education and knowledge, not by going to school or college, but by the scriptures. Gaining education and knowledge for what purpose? Is to acquire intellectual discipline. Our intellect, our buddhi says, do this, don't do this, don't do this. And emotional discipline, both to control your emotions as well as your feelings. That's the second aspect of it. So, next verse 24. The scriptures or shastras in Sanskrit, Upanishads, Vedas, is the way to get knowledge and to know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Knowing this, you have to perform action here in this world. None of us can go without action, even for a short while. We always acting. Whatever you do, that's an act. Act not as on a drama or a stage, but act as action. You open your eyes in the morning, the opening of your eyes is an action. You get out of bed, that's an action. You walk towards the bathroom, that's an action. All of these are actions. So here he's saying, what should you do? What actions should you do in life and what should you not do? You need knowledge from these scriptures as to what is to be done and in certain situation, how to act, etc. The scriptures cannot tell you every single situation. The scriptures can guide you towards gaining this knowledge, how you gain it, and then how to apply it, right? And developing it on your own. I told this story before, maybe more than one time, but I'll tell it again. One time, I had a person working in my home who has now become a good friend, Eduardo, and he would like a handyman fixing things around the house. And one day we were ready to sit down for dinner, and he was still working, poor guy. So throughout the day, we had given him things to eat or drink or whatever, and we were sitting down to dinner. And I said to him, "Would you like to join us?" And he said, "Sure. Smells nice." So my wife put up another plate for him. He washed his hands, came and sat down, and he's looking at the food, and he says, "There's no meat here." I said, "Yeah, there's no meat." He says, "You don't eat meat?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, what do you eat?" I said, "Vegetables, plants, rice, wheat." And he said, "Well, how come you don't eat meat?" And I said, "We don't need to kill another being in order to eat. We feel perfectly content and happy and healthy without eating meat."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, because you don't want to kill the animal?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "But you kill the plant, right? You kill the tree to build this house with wood. You kill plants." And it's a very valid point.
Hmm.
So I asked my teacher at the time, I said, "This is what he said." And he said, "You're right. He's right." He says, "Your knowledge, your intellect, as it develops, basically tells you what and when you should do something. Nowhere in the Gita does it say you can never kill, because he tells Arjuna, these are evil people, even though they're your relatives. You must go to battle and you must kill them, right?
Right.
Similarly, if I was in Alaska, and Alaska, for those of you who are not from here, maybe don't know, it's all ice and cold, and in the winter it's really bitter. There's nothing. I mean, I can't go outside and pick up potatoes from the ice, or
Right.
cauliflower, or wheat or rice. What do? There's plenty of salmon or fish or other things over there, but if I said, I'm going to starve to death if I don't eat one of these fish, but should I? No, it says don't kill fish, don't kill any living being, I'll die. And so the Gita says you use your intellect. At that point, you say either I die or this small little fish dies. I have no choice. I have to kill it to survive. And you beg forgiveness and you kill the fish and you eat it. That's what I learned because of this South American person sitting down at my table said, "How come you don't eat meat?" That you essentially, if you have to have a house, you build it, you have to cut down a tree, you have no choice, you do it. So you develop your own intellect in order to do that, so that you decide in any given situation what is right. If you don't want to kill human beings, but if you see a terrorist as you enter a big cafe, and you
Right.
see that this terrorist is standing in front of you with his machine gun ready to start shooting, you have no choice but to hit him over the head, take his gun away, and disable him. So whether you capture him or you ultimately have to kill him, that's where your knowledge and your intellect comes in to say, in this situation, what is the right thing to do. So that's what this knowledge teaches us. The scriptures, Shastras, Upanishads is the way to get knowledge and know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Knowing this, you have to perform action here in this world. So whether you see a terrorist in front of you, you act to stop him. You don't say, "Well, not my problem, I'm turning around and leaving the cafe." When you are alive, you have the freedom to do or not to do, right? You have to act or not to act. By learning the Shastras, you learn to do the right thing, not just to act, but to act in the right way. So that's it. I am pleased to say that that was the last verse of chapter 16.
Mm.
We have two more chapters left, my friends, 17 and 18. I think you're going to enjoy this very, very much. Lou, any comments, questions?
I'm very excited to turn the page and get on to chapter 17.
Great, great. Thank you, friends, and I hope to see you next time.